Dear speakers, dear guests, I'm very happy to open the second afternoon session of our dental webinar. And my name is Stefan Hildesheim. I'm the Managing Director of relyon Plasma. And let me first of all thank you all. Thank you to the speakers and thank you also to the guests of being here and listening to the content of this interesting seminar that we give online. Let me step back many years, maybe in the late 80s, early 90s, when I started to study surface science. And I think one of the first textbooks that I had to read started with some statement of Wolfgang Pauli, who won the Nobel Prize, famous Austrian scientific person. And he stated, the bulk is made by God, but the surface is made by the devil. And quite often in the topics that we are dealing with, we have to take account to very complex interaction between the surface, the liquid, and the gas phase. And really the surface properties of all the products that we are talking about are extremely important. And atmospheric plasma treatment is of course one way of changing surface properties. It can change surface sterility. It can change the way biology can attach to these surfaces. And I think many of these things are still not really understood. And we have started to walk along this journey. And I want to invite you to do that journey with us together. We have quite a good background in industrial plasma technology. So we know a lot about modifying surfaces in the industrial environment. But of course, the next step in medical and dental is very important to put that on a solid basement, because of course, in the end, it's a patient that is expecting to get the best result from the doctor or for the dental technician, and also from the supplier of implants. And this is a very important matter of trust. And the only way to gain trust is really to develop methods and to analyze these methods with scientific means and to prove the advantages that we have, the longevity and the reliability of the processes. And we can only reach that goal if we work together. And if we have a lot of input also from the practical work of the dentist, of the medical staff, and in the end, we want to have a safe and good process. And so that would be really the message that I have to give to you. Don't hesitate to give your critical input, your creative input. We have just started to learn a lot, and I think we understand much more than maybe 2 years ago. And so I am very curious on the new presentation that we will hear this afternoon. And I will want to invite you all to come back to us. So maybe one day it will be easier to work together in the lab again. And but stay in touch with us. Your input is really appreciated very much. And I wish you all a very nice seminar today. And I give the word back to Andrea, who is doing the moderation of this afternoon session, and Florian Freund. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so hello, welcome to the webinar Plasma Activation of Implants. Today, we will like to introduce you to our process and the device concept with which we would like to enable the activation of dental implants chairside. If you are interested in introducing plasma technology to dentistry as a smart process solution together with us with relyon Plasma, please contact us. To convince you of the advantages and the mode of action, we have prepared a series of interesting presentations. My name is Florian Freund. I'm Development Manager here at relyon Plasma, and I will demonstrate you first the process of implant activation with atmospheric cold plasma that we developed and some basic characteristics of surface activation with plasma. Then we have a very interesting talk from Jan-Willem Bartjes, who is Vice President of the Royal Dutch Dental Association, and he will show us some really interesting insights in his benefits and practical guide of surface energy enhanced implants in the dental office. Afterwards, we have a speak from Professor Fai Tan from Shanghai East Hospital, who is working a lot with plasma already in his daily work. And he will show us some multimodal therapy using cold atmospheric plasma for multi-tissue regeneration. Afterwards, I'm happy to have Marius Benecke here speaking about the technical results he could achieve in showing up the wetting analysis and topographic characterization of cold plasma modified dental implants. And then we have University Professor Dr. Ralf Smeets from the University Medical Center of Hamburg-Eppendorf with his speech of bioactivation of implants by cold plasma. So let me start. First we have some organizational topics. This webinar is recorded and will be made available to you afterwards, that you can share it or show it again. For the time being, all listeners are muted. Maybe we can undo so in the Q&A session in the afterwards to have maybe a discussion or some interesting questions. You can ask questions all the time if you're using the button in the panel, on the side panel. We will maybe we have the questions from our moderator, or we will take them later in the Q&A session. So let me start with my talk about the concept device and the process from implant activation with atmospheric cold plasma. So in the first, I will show you some basics about surface treatment with cold atmospheric plasma, and then I will present you the process and the implementation concept we developed. So the removal of carbon adsorbates and the addition of polar OH groups are the main effects which happens on the surface with plasma treatment. This is known and used very often in industrial applications today. The removal of this carbon adsorbates, even Jan-Willem Bartjes will go in detail on this topic, increase the surface energy, which shows up in a smaller contact angle, can be measured, and the most effect used in industrial applications, the better wettability. So the better wettability and the enhancement of the surface energy shows up, for instance, in bonding processes where we get increased adhesion due to the additional polar anchor groups. The better wettability is used in printing and varnishing processes where the homogeneous printing image can be show up on difficult materials, and even the better adhesion of the color and the homogeneous ink distribution are the measures which makes plasma the plasma application in the industrial. So cold plasma applications are already increasingly used also in medical applications. The disinfection effect has been known for a long time and is currently used in wound treatment, but also in many other topics which are currently scientifically investigated. The advantages in bonding are also already used, for instance, in the dental laboratory, which you can see in detail in our webinar from yesterday. You can find the recording on our webpage. However, improved osseointegration now comes into play as an additional application. The increased surface energy promotes the interactions of proteins and cells with the implant surface on the molecular level. This promotes the initial attachment of osteoblasts and leads to a faster and safer integration of the implant. I will not spend a lot about this because we have really professional speakers, for instance, Ralf Metz, who go in detail on this topic. Besides, we know that surface application is always a surface effect on a submicroscopic scale, which touches normally just a few atomic layers, and we recognize no change in macroscopic material properties. So let me show you in a schematic illustration how our process looks like and how the plasma generation is done. You see the implant, which must be at ground potential and is put in a discharge chamber with an external high voltage electrode. We call this normally a plasma reactor. Plasma reactor is driven by a high voltage generator. We also talk about the plasma driver. So let me briefly state the problem. Normally, plasma generators are point sources or flat plasma generators, but the implants are cylindrical. So the typical solution would look like to rotate the source around the implant or rotate the implant in advance in front of the source. So which both appear not to be a good practice in a sterile implantation procedure. So with this solution, we wrapped the solution as a plasma source around the implant and this without contact, and this generates homogeneously plasma around the implant to activate it. In this way, the plasma activation can be effectively integrated into a sterile implantation procedure. To be able to present the process to you, we have generated a short video, which I will shortly briefly present to you. Activation of the implant surfaces with implaPrep is a supportive procedure that is used before the implants are placed in the jawbone. The increase of the surface energy, this increases the surface energy and improves the wettability of the implant. For this purpose, a sterile reactor is inserted into the unit before the plasma treatment. This reactor size is selected on the basis of the implant diameter. The sterile implant is then unpacked and connected to the sterile transfer tool at the insertion post, a tool, or at the ISO shaft. This serves as both a mechanical connection during activation to center the implant in the reactor, as well as for electrical contact. The transfer tool is now placed together with the implant in the insertion ad and inserted into the reactor by gentle pressure, without endangering sterility. Now the activation process starts. This takes only 45 seconds and takes place without any significant heat input. This short plasma treatment leads to homogeneous activation of the entire implant. The activated implant is then moved out of the reactor with gentle pressure on the insertion ad and removed from the holder without any further steps. The hydrophilic implant can now be inserted in the usual way. An immersion angle analysis shows that the immersion angle has been halved, resulting in significantly improved wetting behavior. This is clearly shown in the comparison of the wetting of two implants. On the left side, we see an untreated implant in its original state. The implant on the right side has been subjected to a short uniform plasma discharge, as just shown. When immersed in the test fluid, it is clear that the untreated implant almost repels it, while the fluid on the treated implant actually pulls up along the thread against gravity. The plasma treatment removed carbon adsorbates, increasing the surface energy and thus improving wettability. The improved surface properties of the implant are achieved without any changes in surface roughness or material composition, which we will see later in Mario's speech. Finally, the plasma-activated surface promotes the initial attachment of osteoblasts, optimizing osseointegration. You can find this video already on our webpage or in social media. If you share our vision, becoming a leading international manufacturer of plasma technology in dental medicine, and would like to assist us in development of intelligent and smart process solutions, please contact us. Contact partners are our CEO Stefan Nettesheim or Head of Sales and Marketing Simona Lehrer. Our strategy is a successive expansion of plasma applications in dental medicine and technology. So to get more in detail, I'm happy to now introduce Jan-Willem Bartjes, who is already working a lot with plasma or activated implants in his daily work. And he really shows us nice interests and practical guidance of activated implants. Thank you, Jan. Welcome. Okay, so he's just stepping in this technical problems, but should be available just in time. So here he is.
Sorry, I was working treating patients today, and somebody needed me, but now I'm totally free for the webinar. Sorry.
Okay, hello again. We're waiting for you.
So it's my turn now, eh? Okay, cool.
It's your turn. Yes.
Perfect. So I will clean. Not sure what you can see on my screen, but I will clean it a little bit so I have more vision myself. Well, good afternoon. I'm a dentist from the Netherlands in Utrecht, in the center of the Netherlands, and I'm also an implantologist. I'm a dentist specialized in implants. And one of the most recent interesting findings in my office is changing the titanium, making it more active, increasing the surface energy of implants by myself, not buying it from a manufacturer, but changing the titanium surface in my office. That was something I started a couple of years ago, and I think it brought me a lot in my office. And I will tell you something about how it works and what the effect is, and also something maybe for the future that you can do with relyon, because they're developing a very interesting device for this that you can use in your office. Well, what many dentists don't know is that titanium, when it is produced, fresh produced, is very active. There's a high surface energy. It's very clean, and it reacts with everything in the air or in the water. So if you drop a little bit of water on the surface, it will spread out like it's super hydrophilic. So fresh titanium has a high surface energy. It's very active, and the fluids will spread all over the surface. So you see on the left, that's a fresh made titanium. However, after 3 days, you can see there's already a huge difference. The titanium gets more hydrophobic, less active. The surface energy goes down. After 2 weeks, the effect is almost gone. And after 4 weeks, the effect is totally gone. The titanium surface is changed. It's become very hydrophobic. And the surface energy is also gone. So what's happening? what's making this titanium, when it's produced, so active, why it's changing, and after 4 weeks, actually the whole effect, the activity, the bioactivity of the titanium is gone. So what's happening is that there is contamination from the air. Hydrocarbon, it's called. It's molecules from hydrogen and carbon, where of course they're in the air. Yeah? You can understand that, and it's coming on the reactive surface. So there's pollution from the air on the titanium surface. So the titanium surface is covered with hydrocarbons, and it's not also from the air, but also during manufacturing. When you mill the titanium, it's in oil, for example, the oil cooling. All kind of carbons are on the surface and actually covering that surface with carbon pollution, hydrocarbon pollution. And maybe you think, well, it's inside a vial. The implant companies, they have styrol packaging, but styrol packaging is also permeable for air. The hydrocarbons are coming through the packaging, going on the implant. So an implant which is like 1 month old is probably better than an implant which is 4 years old. So when you have it on your shelf, the titanium gets older and older and less reactive and more covered with hydrocarbons. That's something we don't know as doctors. We don't think about it. Some manufacturers, they do things on the titanium. They cover it with magnesium salt to prevent the hydrocarbon getting on the surface. Some others, like Straumann, they use like a fluid in the packaging to avoid the air, the hydrocarbons for the air. So there are ways, but those ways are expensive and they're not so good as we can do with plasma or UV. That's something I'm going to tell you about. So you can see here a carbon map. So if you look at an old implant, you can see the carbon building up on the surface. This is a film. On the top, you see titanium of I say a month old. And that's called photofunctionized titanium. That titanium is being radiated with UV light, which is more or less the same as you can do with plasma. But in the old days, there was only UV light. And then you see the titanium gets young again, like it's freshly milled, it gets active again. On the left side, you see untreated implants. And on the right side, you see implants treated with UV light. And you see a huge difference in how the fluid behaves. On the right, it's super hydrophilic. And on the left, it's hydrophobic. So that's something we see as a doctor as a difference in the implant. This is a test I did with plasma in my office. On the left, there is an implant coming out from the package, from the vial, and it's not treated. And you can see actually the air. Let's see if this works. Yeah, there's the air. Even there's almost no fluid touching the implant. The fluid is going away from the implant. And on the right, we used a couple of minutes of plasma treating, and the whole water is like sucked up like a magnet around the implant. And also, and there's another implant, you can see the water doesn't like the implant. It's very hydrophobic coming from the packaging. So that's something we see, and that's something which implant manufacturers try to change. They want to make their implant hydrophilic, because that's also what doctors like. Doctors like to see this fluid going up, like seeing the blood going up, and they do ways to change that. This is an implant I'm placing in my office, and I used, in this case, UV light to make the surface active again, remove all the hydrocarbons, and see what happens. You can see already the blood's coming up at this moment. The blood is like going up. So you can see the hydrophilic effect on that implant. With, I think it was 15 minutes of UV light on the implant. So we see the hydrophilic effect, but what does it do? Do we also see a change in the way the cells behave, in how the proteins adhere to the surface. And actually, that's a big difference. If you look at a new titanium surface here, and you put cells, osteoblasts on it, and you let them divide for a couple of weeks, then you see a lot of new cells coming on the fresh surface. But if you do it on an old surface, so which has a lot of hydrocarbons on it, you see there is almost no cell on it. So there's a huge difference between a new freshly made implant and an old implant. So how can we make this implant which come out from the packaging behave the same as a new implant? Is that possible? And yes, that's possible. You can do it in your office. And I'm doing it for the last couple of years with UV light, and I'm very interested in plasma too. You can see there's a lot of research. You can see that there are much more attached cells if you UV treat the plasma, UV treat the titanium. You can also see it in histological groups. This is untreated, so there's not so much bone around the surface. And on the UV treated, you see there is a lot of bone to implant contact. It's a huge difference. Is it only that hydrophilic effect, that the fact that you see the water and the blood coming up? Actually, we're doing more. If you plasma treat an implant, if you UV treat an implant, you also change the electrostatic properties of titanium. This is something that's very unique. An implant manufacturer cannot do this. Every electrostatic property, if you put it in a packaging, it will disappear. So enhancing the electrostatic property is only something which you can do with plasma or UV light in your office. So this is something that's very special. And what's happening? A normal implant, after a while, gets a negative charge. All the there's of course a titanium oxide layer. That's the biocompatible layer on the implant surface. In the end, that's a negative electrostatic property, and that means that a lot of positive atoms will go first to your surface, and we call this the inorganic bridge. So you have your titanium first, then you get your positive atoms and molecules, the inorganic bridge, and then you can get your biological proteins, cells, and everything. So there's a layer in between. There's no direct cells or proteins on the surface. There's something in between which slows it down and makes it harder for cells to get there. And what happens if you treat your titanium with plasma or UV light and you make it electrostatic positive? Then you can see that all the cells and proteins can go directly on the surface. That's something we also saw in the past with hydroxyapatite coatings. You can also have direct bone bonding, but we also know that coatings have disadvantages. You rather have your pure titanium, which behaves the same as hydroxyapatite. So you have direct bone bonding after plasma treating or UV treating your titanium surface. So they can say, how much is that effect of the electrostatic effect? And actually, that's a huge effect. And this is a very interesting research about this. Here they had two types. They had untreated and UV treated titanium. And you can see on the black diagrams is the UV treated. There is much more cells, and also the cells are much stronger attached to the surface. So then they were said, okay, we remove the electrostatic effect. We make the titanium neutral. And you can see, even if you make it neutral, it still is hydrophilic. So it's still hydrophilic. But by removing the electrostatic effect, you can see there's hardly any extra effect on the cells which are attached to the surface. Here it's much better. And without the electrostatic effect, there is hardly any extra effect. So although the implant is hydrophilic, it still is marginally better. So maybe the best effect we're doing is not what we see of the blood's going up and the fluids attracted, but maybe where the electrostatic effect we do is probably the most important. So we know that fresh titanium is more active than old titanium. So what you can do, if you plasma treat or photo functionize your titanium with UV light, you can bring it back to the old state when it was produced, so that fresh state which works, but you also do something extra. You also have the electrostatic effect. And we call this the booster effect. So this part, this can never be done by an implant company. This is something you only can do in your office. Of course, you can buy SLA active and other things, and you can hope you have a little bit less degrading, so you're more in this range. But the booster effect is something you only can do yourself in the office. And actually, there are a lot of studies about this. There are many studies about the benefits of photofunctionalized or UV or plasma treated titanium, and all things show that you have a much better cell adherence, more proteins, better cell attachments, more cells. So it's something we should use in our office. I think it is not used enough at this moment. It can be a new trend in implantology. Why is it important? This is, for example, an immediate placed implant. So that means that this is the bone and this is the implant. There is some room, some space around the implant. And we call that the osteoblast jumping distance. If that's too big, it's very difficult for osteoblasts to come to the surface. So here you see the space, but you can help. You should help the osteoblasts. And there is some interesting research about how using a UV light or plasma treating, how this helps the osteoblast to come to the surface. This research, they placed an implant. This is the white circle in the middle, and then they have a hole in the bone, so the bone is not touching the implant. So there's space between the implant and the bone. So I think it was around 2 millimeters. And then they let it heal for 2 weeks, and then they, of course, these are animals, so they sacrificed the animals, and they looked. A part of the implants were untreated, this old titanium, and another part was UV treated titanium. And you can see a large difference in the untreated. After 2 weeks, nothing is happening. And there's some bone forming towards the implant, but if you look at the UV treated, there's a lot of bone already on the implant, and it's already forming bridges with the bone around it. And you can see the same for the transitional period place. There's no bone on the implant, but you see on the UV treated part there's bone. In the apical part, you can see there's no bone on the untreated part, and there's already bone growing on the UV treated part of the implant. So there's a huge difference. And this helps in your immediate placement. If you're doing a lot of immediate placements in your office, you will have much better bone growth in a shorter time around your implants. And another very interesting effect, which is I didn't know for a while, and then I saw it, is that also bacteria don't like actually activated titanium. If you plasma treat your titanium or UV treat your bacteria, will have a more difficult time to grow on the surface. For example, this is untreated. You see a lot of bacteria. In 4 hours, almost the whole surface is covered, and in 8 hours is fully covered. If you have your titanium activated, you can see there's way less bacteria. So that's important if you place your implant in an immediate way. First few hours, there will be probably some leakage from saliva. Bacteria will coming in. It will take the body a couple of hours to repair actually. And in that time, during that very crucial moment, your implant is actually better protected against bacteria. And why is it? Probably because the hydrocarbons, where I talked about it in the beginning of the lecture, are like places where the bacteria can grab. So they use the hydrocarbons to colonize your surface. And so by removing the hydrocarbons, you will make it much harder for the bacteria to colonize your implant. Okay, what you hear, well, I'm already, a lot of people say, well, I'm already very successful in implantology. I have 97% success, I have 96%, I have 98% success. That can be true, but it can be better also. And you can do maybe more immediate implants or do earlier loading. You can make it more complex while not dropping your success rate. This is my data from my office. I placed 29 implants in 2020, and I had 2 non-osseous integrated implants, so 2 failures. This is a little bit more than 99 free success on the short time, of course, but with the plasma activation, it's all about short time. The effect's, of course, not there after a few years. So it says something about the short time success. I also did some more complex things like guided bone regeneration, sinus augmentations, immediate placements. So they were not all easy implants, and I still had a huge success. And this is the Formula 1 is finally starting tomorrow, the new season. And this is the last race of last year in Abu Dhabi. And you can see the difference between the winner of that race, Max Verstappen, and the number 10 was only 2.2%. So if you want to be a midfielder, or you want to be a winner, or you want to be on the podium, only small changes. That's the if you have to leave no stone unturned to get the best results. And over time, it does make a difference. I place around 300 implants a year in the office here. And let's say we have 98.5 success the first 5 years. That means that you also have rework. Implants fail, and the first 5 years, you have to give some guarantee. People expect you to fix it. So those rework cost money. I say well, around 500 per surgery, so it would be 11,000. But if you drop marginally like 2%, you be a midfielder, you go to 96.5%, which is still maybe high, but look at the difference. You have more than double in the rework, a lot of more rework cost, but most important, people talk. If they say, I went to this dentist, I had no pain, and the implant healed perfectly in short time. And the other says, to the dentist, he had to do it twice. And so it's for your name. It's a big difference for your name and establishing your office. Is also €5 because you have to replace the light bulbs. I think there was something wrong with my AirPods, but I will check it in. If you use a UV light, you have to replace the light bulbs. And after 500 times, you have to replace the light bulbs. So you have a cost per use, and also your machine has to go to another place for a couple of weeks to get repairs. So that's of course very inconvenient if you want to use it all the time. And it has also some high cost. And the treatment time is long. It's around 5 to 12 minutes. 12 minutes for the perfect activation of your surface. And that's of course too long. If you drill a hole in the bone, you make your preparation, you cannot wait 12 minutes. Because you cannot leave the patient there with a hole in the bone for 12 minutes. So you need a cone beam CT. You need to know which implant you place and already start the machine before you give the injection, for example. So that's a bit inconvenient because you don't always want to use cone beam CT. Not everybody has a cone beam CT. The machine has one advantage that you can use 4 implants in one session. So, but I'm very interested in the relyon plasma device, which is coming out probably somewhere in the future. I hope the costs are much better than usually. I don't know what the costs are, but probably they will be better. And the costs per use are almost not there. You only need electricity and air from which you already have, of course, in your office. And one of the large benefits is that your treatment time is 1 minute. And that's very short. So you can do your preparation, you can choose which implant you use, you can change your implant, and just wait 1 minute. The only disadvantage is maybe that you have one implant per session per use, but normally most of your cases are 1 or 2 implants, so that doesn't really matter. The last slide, the take-home messages. Plasma treating or UV light is the only 100% really effective method to overcome the aging, the carbon pollution of your titanium surface. So if you do it, you don't have to worry about, oh, this implant is all 3-4 years old, so it is less active. You standardize, you make every implant equal, and even better than it is produced. And that, in the end, is the next step in minimizing the risk of failures. And also because the bone to implant contact is high, it might also help in the loss of integration later on. And what I like, there's a new trend going on where you have dual surface or triple surface implants, where you have a smooth implant coronal and a rough part apical. And by having smooth implants, it might help later on in the peri-implant health or your peri-implantitis surgeries. But smooth surfaces do have a disadvantage. They take longer to heal, etc. And by using plasma or UV, you will overcome that smooth surface actually. So you bring it back to the quality of a rough surface with all the benefits of a smooth surface. So that is something which is very interesting for me. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jan Willem, for a nice speech again. So it's really interesting to have people working in the daily work with the technology we are developing to get the feedback, to get the requirements on what to enhance and how the machine should work. Thank you very much for this nice speech and for your input. For sure, we'll keep an input in contact. So,
thank you.
There are currently some questions.
Yes. So the first question is, Jan Willem, do you have any experience of the impact of the electrostatic effect after plasma treatment?
That's a good question, because I know for UV light it's very important, but I discussed it with relyon, with you guys, and also the plasma treating gives an electrostatic effect. I didn't compare it. I don't know which has a higher electrostatic effect, so that's maybe something we should research later on. But I think the electrostatic effect is a major part of the improved healing that you also see. So, but when you look at comparison studies between plasma treating and UV, because there are comparison studies, and you see even that plasma is doing it a little bit better than UV light. So I would expect that the electrostatic effect of plasma is more or less equal, or maybe even better.
Okay.
Next question. How long will the booster effect last?
Which effect is that? Sorry, the
booster.
Oh,
so
the booster effect. That's the booster is the electrostatic. That's the electrostatic effect. So that's because you're cleaning the surface, so you're bringing it back to the original state. And then the booster effect is actually you give it a charge. Short. So you have to use your implant in 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah, so immediately.
Yeah, so immediately. But it's okay. That's the reason why implant manufacturers can't do it, and why you in your office can have something extra.
Okay. Next question. What is approximately the largest osteoblast jumping distance after surface activation?
Well, normally we say in implant dentistry, if it's 2 millimeters or more, you're in trouble. And that's what we say as dentists from the literature we know. What I saw from what I showed you in this presentation, it was a gap of 2 millimeters, and you saw actually after 2 weeks, you saw in the treated titanium, you saw already bone after 2 weeks on the surface. But it was, of course, they were animals. So in animals, everything goes quicker than in real life. So we have to be aware this is animal studies. So it will happen in human too, But you cannot say in 2 weeks you have bone on the surface in humans. So but it will be better, of course, than you don't do it. But maybe it takes in humans 4 weeks. But it's something which always goes quicker than if you have your normal UV normal titanium surface. So you see the cells can directly go to the surface immediately. And that's a big difference by if you have all the hydrophobic surface without and with all the carbon pollution.
Okay, next one. There are a lot of questions now. Can you tell us why the titanium implants look a little bit brownish? Or is it just because of the photos?
Why it was brown first? You mean the disc, or can you repeat the question?
The customer writes, why do the titanium? Yes, the disc. No.
Yeah. It was just the disc. It was from the Japanese company, which we use for the UV treatment, and I think it is some kind of anodized titanium. So it has a special treatment. So you can give titanium all colors. Actually, you can make it purple, gold, brown, blue. You can give it all colors, but this is more. It doesn't really matter. It's just an anodized color, but it has no effect on the surface activity.
Okay, I can support this. We have also this titanium samples from the surface manufacturer for different surface preparations, and we also recognize the same effect with the aging and the positive effect with the plasma treatment. So these discs are maybe common from the surface manufacturers.
Okay, next question. Are there for UV treatment effects from shadowing?
So can you explain a little bit better this question? Sorry, for me. Can you repeat it?
So I think the question is if the UV light, are there some effects of shadow effects on the implants?
Shadow effects. I'm not sure what shadow effects are, but even if plasma and UV treatments, it's proven that you don't change the topology of the surface. Eh? You're not changing the structure.
It's if there's some shades on due to the structure of the implant, for instance, in the thread of the implant.
Oh, the shades from the UV light.
Shades,
Yes. The machine, the UV machine, the bulbs are almost everywhere. So it's actually quite a good machine. So it's the bulbs are, you have to place the implant in the exact height, in the exact field, and then the UV light's coming actually from everywhere. So they did a very good job, but that's why maybe it's a very expensive machine also, and it takes a lot of time. But yeah, you have to place your implant in the exact spot in the machine. If you do it too high or too low, you get the shadows. That's true. But there are like marks where you have to put your implant.
Thank you very much for this question. We also have thought about this in the plasma treatment, but as we can probably show in Mario's speech later on, we get really also very homogeneous distribution of the activation of the whole implant.
Yeah, I saw your machine, and I'm really interested because for me, it's like 1 minute. It would be a huge improvement in my workflow if you can make this work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and William. So I think we will post later questions in the Q&A session afterwards, and go now further with the speech of Professor Fai Tan from the Shanghai East Hospital about his studies with plasma in multi-tissue regeneration. So Professor Fai Tan, you welcome with your speech.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to put this on. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now we can see it.
Perfect. Voila. Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you, Florian. Good morning, or should I say good evening, to the audience from all around the world within different time zones. It's actually midnight here in Shanghai. My name is Professor Tan, and I am a surgeon qualified and trained in the UK, as well as a researcher in plasma medicine. It is my greatest honor to present our research findings and elicit, hopefully, potential marketing opportunities using Relyon's latest handheld plasma device, piezo brush. So for those who are not familiar with me, I am a registered doctor in the UK and a fellow of Royal College of Surgeons of England upon finishing 10 years of surgical training. In addition, I have vast research interests in clinical research and interdisciplinary research. These include head and neck surgery, plasma medicine, surgical implants, biomaterials, and cochlear implant. So I'm currently exploring my clinical and academic career in Tongji University, Shanghai, China. Tongji University was established in 1907 by the German government, together with a German physician called Erich Pollen. It is therefore a living monument of Sino-German relationship. It is now a comprehensive, research-oriented institution and also a top 10 university in China. The fact that I'm both a doctor and a researcher means that I have access to resources such as lab equipment, in vitro facility, animal trial, and patient data. Most of our research is carried out in the Plasma Medicine and the Surgical Implant Center, aka PIMSIC. Our lab is equipped with common experimental facilities, including but are not limited to cell culture platform, protein analysis, PCR machines, imaging hardware, small and large animal surgery unit, and biomaterial manufacturing equipment. From a personnel point of view, as the director of PIMSIC, I have 2 postdoctoral fellows reporting directly to me, 3 PhD and 1 master students, and a research assistant. In addition to these full-time staff and students, I also have part-time researcher working for me, mostly based in the affiliated hospitals. We have published 20 SCI papers with impact factor ranging between 4 and 14. Most importantly, we are still actively expanding our group, especially in the area of plasma medicine. So what do we do in our lab? In a nutshell, plasma medicine. The very core of our technology, cold atmospheric plasma, aka CAP, relies on devices such as piezo brush, which is provided by Relyon. The narrow definition of plasma medicine implies direct application of CAP on living cells and tissues. However, in the broad sense, any applications of CAP, whether direct or indirect, intending to treat a disease, should be included in the practice of plasma medicine. In the following slides, we're going to introduce 1 example each for the direct and indirect CAP applications, i.e. tissue regeneration and enhancing surgical implants, respectively, with the former being emphasized more. So in the first experiment, we developed a multimodal treatment system for multi-tissue regeneration. What that means is investigating CAP's individual and combined effects on wound healing, angiogenesis, neurogenesis, and osteogenesis. In particular, we used acidic fibroblast growth factor as the benchmark and compared CAP's performance with AFGFs. In this study, we are the first to develop a multimodal therapy combining the aforementioned physical, chemical, and pharmacological treatments. This work was systematically performed at the tissue, cellular, protein, and gene levels using histochemical staining, flow cytometry, ELISA, and PCR, respectively. The results are shown in the following 4 slides. The first aspect of this experiment is on wound healing. We created a circular cutaneous wound on the rat's back, as demonstrated in this photo. The allocation of all the animals is obviously 4 groups, i.e. control, cap treatment, AFGF treatment, and combined treatment groups. The endpoint is the morphological and quantitative wound healing over a nearly 2-week period. In summary, CAP can effectively enhance wound healing, whose effect is equivalent to AFGFs, and their combination further facilitates it. The overall advantage of CAP might be multifactorial, including at least increased cellular proliferation and reduced tissue inflammation. So the second aspect of this experiment is angiogenesis, i.e. new blood vessel formation. In order to study the effect of CAP and AFGF on angiogenesis, immunohistochemical examination in the skin tissue and ELISA of angiogenic proteins produced by human vascular endothelial cells were conducted. The results showed increased expression of CD31, VEGF, and TGF-beta in vivo when treated using CAP. In addition, CAP treatment increased expression of angiogenesis inducers such as angiogenin and angiopoietin-1, and decreased that of angiogenesis inhibitors such as angiostatin and angiopoietin-2. In summary, CAP can improve angiogenesis, and the combined treatment seemed to be synergistic with AFGF. The third aspect of this experiment is neurogenesis. In order to study the effect of CAP and AFGF on in vitro neuronal wound healing and neurogenesis, neuronal cell motility and morphology were assessed, respectively. This figure here is a scanning electron microscopy photo of neuron attachment and proliferation stimulated using different methods. As you can see, cells in the control group had a very low density. In comparison, neurons treated by CAP increased in not only cell number, but also the number of cellular extensions. In addition, AFGF alone and the addition of AFGF to CAP treatment significantly boosted the production of mature neurites. In summary, CAP can enhance in vitro neurogenesis, although it's not as powerful as AFGF, because after all, AFGF is also a type of neurotrophic factor. So finally, the last aspect of this experiment is osteogenesis. The sequential events of in vitro osteogenesis, such as osteoblast cell adhesion, proliferation, differentiation, and bone nodule formation, was analyzed respectively. This figure here is alizarin red staining of the newly formed bone nodules by osteoblasts. The negative control had no visible bone nodule. On the contrary, the positive control revealed 2 solid nodules. While CAP treatment facilitated the production of more bone nodules with various size and maturity, AFGF treatment considerably suppressed in vitro osteogenesis. Therefore, combining CAP and AFGF therapies produced only mediocre results. In summary, while both CAP and AFGF can improve osteoblast cell adhesion and proliferation, only CAP can enhance osteogenic differentiation and bone formation in vitro. To conclude this entire experiment, this is the first study that provides a direct comparison between CAP and AFGF in terms of their therapeutic effect on wound healing, angiogenesis, neurogenesis, and osteogenesis. This proof of concept study provides insights into the possibility of cold atmospheric plasma as a promising solution for multi-tissue regeneration. So having introduced our results on CAP facilitated tissue regeneration, which is an excellent example of direct applications of cold plasma, we're now moving on to the indirect applications of CAP achieved in our lab. It is enhancing surgical implants using CAP. The application of implants has infiltrated numerous surgical specialties. Common surgical implants that have been successfully treated by CAP include the hip prosthesis, the dental implant, the cochlear implant, and the coronary stent, as demonstrated in this figure. In the following 3 slides, we're going to introduce 3 main strategies that are developed for this purpose. They are surface modification, coating, and drug delivery. The first experiment or strategy of enhancing surgical implants using CAP is surface modification. In this particular experiment, we used atmospheric plasma to activate the surface of hydroxyapatite implant, which is intended for osseous applications. The plasma was used as a post-deposition modification process to increase the surface hydrophilicity without inducing any concomitant damage. Pathway-specific PCR arrays, as shown in this figure here, reveal that wettability has a substantial influence on gene expression during osteogenic differentiation of human mesenchymal stem cells. Plasma-activated HA tends to enhance this process by systematically deregulating multiple genes. It was concluded from this study that atmospheric pressure plasma is a potent tool for modifying the biological function of material without causing thermal damage, such that adhesion molecules and drugs might be deposited on the original surface to improve performance. The second experiment or strategy of enhancing implants using CAP is coating. In this study, we successfully used atmospheric plasma to enhance the biological functions of surgical implants by coating them with extracellular matrix proteins. The developed collagen and laminin coatings demonstrate advantageous material properties such as increased hydrophilicity and physiological durability. Furthermore, these coatings exhibited improved biological interactions with human mesenchymal stem cells and neural stem cells. Cell adhesion, proliferation, and differentiation proved markedly refined, as shown by enzymatic detachment, flow cytometry, and ELISA, respectively. Collectively, we present atmospheric plasma as a versatile tool for enhancing surgical implants through customizable implant-specific and tissue-specific coatings. The third experiment or strategy of enhancing implants using CAP is drug delivery. In this study, we used this technology to successfully create a dexamethasone delivery metallic implant. UV vis spectroscopy revealed much more sustainable drug release compared to the implants produced using simple drug attachment. In addition, our drug-releasing implant was found to have multiple biological benefits. As proven by the ELISA data, this multi-layered drug complex provides differential regulation on the cell apoptosis, as reviewed in this figure here, as well as pro-osteogenic and anti-inflammatory effects on the peri-implant tissue. Collectively, we present atmospheric pressure plasma as a powerful platform for creating a surgical implant-based drug delivery system, which renders multiple therapeutic potentials. This table here summarizes what we have achieved so far in plasma medicine. Our applications of CAP are very straightforward. They're either direct or indirect. The perfect examples are tissue regeneration and enhancing surgical implants, respectively. We understand that there are way more other applications in plasma medicine than what we have tried. So that is why I'm humbly leaving the rest of this webinar to my fellow colleagues to share their success. So here's a glimpse of our recent publications in plasma medicine. The impact factor of these journals, as I mentioned before, range from 3 to 13. So, okay, in the last 15 minutes, we have been talking about past experience. I'd like to take advantage of the next 5 minutes to discuss our future opportunities, either medical, industrial, or marketing. The first group of opportunities would lie in skin treatment. Without a doubt, skincare is a perpetual massive market that draws tremendous attention. In cosmetics, CAP has been proven to accelerate subcutaneous blood flow, likely leading to brighter skin tone and better skin quality. In anti-aging, CAP's ability to stimulate extracellular matrix protein regeneration, such as collagen, might help diminishing signs of skin senescence. In skin disorder, the anti-inflammatory feature of CAP could facilitate treating inflammatory skin conditions such as psoriasis and eczema. In hair treatment, CAP might help rescuing dying hair follicles. The second group of opportunities would lie in implantology. As my previous colleague mentioned, surgical implants are an emerging therapeutic method applied daily by surgeons in their clinical practice. Not only has it medical values, modification of implants is also a huge market with billions of dollars of global revenue yearly. The process can be divided into 3 stages, i.e. during manufacturing, post-production, and perioperatively. For example, CAP can be included in the factory pipeline when the implant is fabricated. It can also be used after manufacturing, for example, to increase the surface wettability. In addition, a sterile implant can be processed on the table immediately before implantation to maximize its therapeutic efficacy, thanks to its antimicrobial property. So the third group of opportunities would lie in cancer management. Cancer is still one of the leading causes of death in both developed countries and developing countries. The mainstay of cancer treatment include surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, and target therapy. There's constant need for developing novel anti-cancer therapy. In the last few years, cold plasma has been applied clinically for cancer treatment, and the most notable example is coablation. However, its usage is classified as tissue damage, which might not be ideal for adjacent healthy tissue. The applications of cold atmospheric plasma in oncology is truly versatile. For example, it can be used on superficial cancer, such as skin tumors. It can also be used for cancer grown in an open cavity, such as those in the oral cavity, nose, and the ear. It can also be used for tumors in visceral organs by means of plasma-activated medium, aka PAM. To summarize this section, cold atmospheric plasma generated using devices such as relyon piezo brush possesses huge markets, not just in industry, but also in clinical settings. Some future opportunities include, but are not limited to, skincare, implantology, cancer treatment, tissue engineering, and neurology and orthopedics. We sincerely hope that this webinar could impress you at different levels and hopefully welcome business collaborations. So this is Professor Tan, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Faitan, for your very interesting speech. So we also are very happy to have this scientific studies behind. So we also recognize that the scientific knowledge about plasma application in medicine is increasing, and your studies really shown a lot of applications or possible applications. And I think it's the right step for relyon plasma to start now to go into this market. But as we're on starting, we need a strong partner to do to go into such big potential of plasma applications in medicine. So are there currently some questions? Yes. So I think Andrea will give them.
So are there any health issues for the direct treatment of skin?
Did you say health issues?
Health issues, yes.
Okay. Not really health issues, but the only thing is that the power of the plasma has to be precisely controlled, because if you use this on a conscious animal, if you use very large power, it's going to release discharges and cause irritations or even pain. So for the in vivo experiment, we had to tone down the power. So that is something we have to pay particular attention to during the animal experiment.
Okay, and next question. What is the reason why cold atmospheric plasma is more effective for osteogenesis?
What is the reason? Well, that is an excellent question, because you see, for for osteogenesis, it's not just a one-step process. It's a chain of events starting from cell attachment, proliferation, differentiation, and bone nodule formation in vitro. So as far as I know, CAP is quite beneficial in all of these stages. However, AFGF is not. It might be good for cell proliferation and attachment, but it strongly suppresses differentiation. So if you combine the overall effects of these two different types of treatments, that's why CAP is slightly better than AFGF. That's my personal perception.
Okay. And can you tell us if the effects of plasma are predictable with respect to roughness?
To roughness of the surgical implant? Well, you see, in my previous study, we did measure the roughness before and after treatment with plasma. However, we did not notice any statistical change in the surface roughness.
Okay, so I will just step into this question because we have another speaker in the pipe, which is just answering a lot of, or especially this question, as we also was aware of the treatment, the surface treatment in implants maybe is a very special process, and we want to for sure be aware that not to destroy this special surface. So if there are no further question, I will. Okay, so one question, and then I think we'll step to the next.
So, did you also perform tests on the effect of coating on dental implants?
Could you repeat that question? It's a signal problem.
Sorry. Did you perform tests on the effect of coating of dental implants?
Did you say protein on dental implants?
Coating.
Oh, yeah, you see, dental implant is a broad definition, right? And as my last colleague mentioned, it can be made by numerous materials, starting from titanium. Well, actually, it's titanium alloy. It's not pure titanium, or it can be other materials such as HA-coated titanium, or pure HA, or TCP, all these kind of things. So depending on the base material you use, you might have different reactions, or osteoinductive properties to different extent. So that is highly material dependent. However, having said that, the overall is always, in my opinion, advantageous. If that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Faitan. I think also we will get, when we think on the speech from Jan-Willem Bartjes, which can a little bit compares the effects which we can produce and which not, and what are the comparisons to others. I hope we can go in a discussion also later to probably see some benefits or advantages of different processes, which can probably lead to the same effect. But as the question before just showed, that there is a high need to answer this question: is plasma applied on a implant surface damaging something or changing some of the highly sophisticated surfaces? We made a study together with the high school, the Hochschule Osnabrück, together with Marius Benecke, and I'm glad to present him now with his speech and his results. Marius, you can start.
Okay, now I got the right to talk. Very, thank you. Hello and welcome everybody to my presentation regarding wetting analysis and topographical characterization of DBD plasma modified dental implants. My name is, as mentioned, Marius Benecke. I'm research assistant at the Laboratory of Chemistry and Surface Modification at the University of Applied Science Osnabrück under supervision of Professor Dr. Petersen. I've been working on the surface analysis of different modified surfaces for the last about 5 years, but especially on plasma-treated substrates of all kinds. The next about 50 minutes, I would like to present excerpts from our results of a cooperation project between our laboratory and the relyon plasma. Let's first take a look at my agenda. Okay, it's working. Now, okay. We will start with a short introduction to the topic. We will then talk briefly about the basics of contact angle measurement and the standard methods used. We are also going to take a look at the method of inverse tensiometry, which was established in course of the project. This is followed by the results of the investigations. Here I will show the correlation between the different analysis methods, and then we will look at 2 different implant systems and their wetting behavior before and after plasma treatment. In the next section, we will look at the topography of implant systems and what influence the plasma treatment has on these surface structures. In addition, I briefly show 2 types of contaminations that were noticed more frequently in the course of the investigations and discuss if these could be applied during the plasma treatment. I will end with the conclusion that summarizes the result and the influence of the plasma treatments on the implant. So, as already mentioned at the beginning, the results presented here are excerpts from a project that our laboratory carried out with the relyon plasma. The focus of this investigation was a physicochemical characterization of dental implants treated in a DBD plasma. The question was how much of the plasma treatment influenced the surface structure and which parameters result in the maximum wetting improvement with minimal stress for the implant material. In order to be able to make a serious statement about this, various implants were treated with the sample device of the implaPrep concept, and the wetting behavior as well as the surface topography was characterized using various methods. In addition to the static contact angle measurement, a newly established method was used for the wetting investigations, which we named inverse tensiometry, and the surface topography analysis was carried out by SEM. Some images I will present later. So in order to evaluate the influence of the different plasma surfaces and geometries, a total of 5 different plasma implant systems with different surface types and 10 different implant geometries were analyzed. The samples differed not only in the surface structure, but also in length, thickness, thread depth, thread pitch, and so on. So we should have covered a large part of the relevant influencing factors on the implant side. But let's turn to the basics of wetting analysis. The contact angle, theta, which is shown schematically on the bottom right, is often used to measure the measure of the wettability of a substrate or surface with the test liquid used. In general, the following basic rule applies. The lower the contact angle of a liquid, the better is the wettability with this liquid. So both static and dynamic methods are used to determine this characteristic value. Mostly, however, the static method with a Sessa drop method is used. Therefore, a drop with a defined volume is carefully placed on the surface and observed laterally with the camera. After the drop has spread and the contact angle is determined by means of shape analysis. However, a requirement for this method is a flat surface on which the drop can be placed, and in order to determine a correct baseline. As you can probably imagine, at this point, such areas are rather the exception on dental implants, which is why the analysis in general is difficult. An additional or more advanced possibility for quantifying wetting behavior is the measurement of contact angles of different test liquids on the same substrate and calculation of the surface free energy according to one of numerous different evaluation methods. Due to the complex geometry and the small size of the dental implants, this method is generally very difficult to implement. Let us therefore turn to our newly established method, the inverse tensiometry. So tensiometry in itself is an established method for determining wetting characteristics. However, in most applications, the focus is on the liquid. In addition to this surface tension measurements, you can also use this method to determine contact angles of solids. As shown in the figure on the right, a test specimen is immersed in the liquid and the necessary force for this specimen is recorded. Immersion and retraction in the test liquid results in a force curve that's characteristic for an analyzed system. So the contact angle can be calculated from the force required for the wetting using the so-called Wilhelmy equation. Devices that work according to this method are sold by numerous manufacturers and are used regularly in the industry, for example, in wastewater control. When we talk about inverse tensiometry, we're talking about the same mathematical background, but simpler. Equipment needed for this method can be found in nearly every well-equipped laboratory without the need to purchase expensive additional analytical equipment. Because as you can see on the illustration on the right, the force is recorded using a balance. So the force is thus recorded in the opposite direction to tensiometry. So it's not F, the force that is measured, it's minus F, the negative force that is measured. To perform a measurement, a beaker with a test liquid, in our case, it's mostly water, is positioned on the balance, and the balance is tarred. So the sample is after that immersed by a linear drive with uniform speed, as just like the tensiometry, and the mass curve is recorded. In our specific case, we used a dip coater we already had, which we programmed to perform this task. So, and if no balance with data logger is available, the mass curve must be recorded manually at regular intervals depending on the immersion speed. So, additionally, the buoyancy force must be compensated, for which the sample geometry must be known. After that, the contact angle curve of the samples can be calculated using the Wilhelmi equation already mentioned. We now speak of the immersion angle in the case of values determined by means of inverse tensiometry. So let us look at these mentioned curves as an introduction to our result section. Shown here is both the mass curve on the left and the course of the immersion angle on the right over the immersion distance of a titanium plate. The upper curve on the left side represents the immersion, the lower curve the retraction. As easily can be seen, the compensation of the buoyancy force results in an immersion angle curve that with a clear plateau over the whole measurement distance. By calculating a mean immersion angle, the wetting behavior of the sample can be described with a single value. In this case, it's 55 degrees plus minus 1.3 degrees. To evaluate these measurements, the contact angle and immersion angles were determined on different substrate of simple geometry. So let's look at this. On the left, you can see the characteristic angles of a polyethylene sheet, which is determined in addition to tensiometry by means of dynamic and static contact angle measurements. It was shown that an average contact angle of 96 degrees in water was determined with all three methods. Also, the standard deviation of 1.5 degrees for tensiometry is higher than for the dynamic or the static measurement. It is still within a reasonable range. On the right side, there are the angles of a titanium sheet. Of course, the wettability of a metallic surface with water is better than a non-polar polyethylene, which is reflected in these measurements. The mean value from several tensiometric measurements here is an immersion angle of 55 degrees with a standard deviation of slightly less than 5 degrees. The mean value determined by static contact angle measurement is about 7 degrees above this value, but with a comparable standard deviation. As a result, the standard deviation of all three methods overlap, which speaks for a correlation between these methods. After the plausibility of this result has been validated, measurements were carried out on implants to characterize their wetting behavior. And that's on the next slide. The illustration shown here, the immersion angle curve of a reference sample from implant series, we call it now A, implant series A, the solid line, and the curve of a plasma treated sample, the dotted line, from the same series are shown. At this point, I would like to mention one difference beside the levels of the curves. The maximum immersion distance of the two samples slightly differ. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but here you can see. This is not due to different sample geometry, but it's related to the specimen holder, which unfortunately allows a slight offset of the specimen, and therefore it's irrelevant. But now to the immersion curve. After a short increase in the immersion angle in the front area, the solid line of the reference sample shows a slightly increasing plateau around 120 degrees. This course is also reflected in the mean values and standard deviations of the immersion as listed in the table. on the right side. The reference implant thus shows a slightly hydrophobic character with 120 degrees and a standard deviation of 11.8 degrees. After the plasma treatment with implaPrep, the curve shows a clearly different course. The increase of the front part of the curves turned negative, which indicates a clear interaction between the surface and the liquid used. The plateau in the middle section is less clear and gives way to a slightly, let's call it jerky curve at a much lower level. The mean contact angle is 63 degrees with a standard deviation comparable to the reference. The plasma treatment thus results in a significant improvement of the wettability of the implant with water, which also suggests that interactions with other polar media in general has also been improved. So for comparison, the immersion angle curve of another implant series, that's called B, is shown. You can see the implant geometry on the right side. Here too, the curve of the reference sample is compared to the plasma treated sample, the dotted line. Basically, the effect is the same, even if the shape of the curve is slightly different, very different, not just slightly. Both curves show a very jagged curve, a course, which could be due to the very coarse thread of the implant series. You see here is there's a very coarse thread. So this could be a reason for this course. Nevertheless, the same effect as this implant series A is also seen with these samples. The plasma treatment shifts the level of the curve to lower values and approximately halves the mean contact angle. Even though the implant systems differ in size and geometry, an equivalent improvement of the wetting behavior due to the plasma treatment was observed for both samples. However, the samples differ not only in their macroscopic design. Clear difference can also be seen at the micro and nanoscopic level. However, let's start with the image of implant series A, the sample with the plateau in the wetting curves. We see a few slides ago. On the far left, there's an overview image of one of the areas analyzed. On higher magnifications, you can see the actual surface structure on the implant. It shows a topography that has been created by means of sandblasting and acid etching, consisting of micro and nano structure. Within the crater-shaped structure, there are also structured areas with fine edges, corners, hollows, and so on. This surface structure must, of course, not be altered during the plasma process, as it plays a critical role in the correct healing of the implant into the bone. Which is why plasma-treated samples were also analyzed by SEM. And here, an overview image is also on the left, but only at 1,000 times magnification to get an overview of larger areas of the surface. As you can guess, the structured surface topography extends over the entire sample. The image with higher magnifications shows that the nanostructure within the craters and the sharp edges on the surface are not affected by the plasma treatments. As you can see here are sharp edges, hollows, and whatever, and they are still intact. So let's take a look at implant system B, the implant with the slightly jaggy curve. Here the surface topography is completely different. The overview image already shows that the surface has macroscopic hollows, which can already be seen at very low magnifications on the left side. The difference to the implant surface just shown, however, only becomes really clear at higher magnifications when you see it in the middle picture. This is not a microscopic crater landscape, but a scaldy, textured surface with numerous edges, undercuts, and differently orientated planes. However, at higher magnifications on the right side, a structuring in the nanometer range can also be seen, which is, however, partly interrupted by larger, smooth areas. As you can see here, there's no intense microstructuring. So how does the plasma treatment of such an implant affect the surface structure? Exactly as you've expected, there are no changes on the surface that could be related to the plasma treatment. The surface is still structured both at the micro and the nanometer level. During the numerous SEM examinations, however, contaminations could be found on the surface from time to time, and the origin of these contaminations had to be clarified. Therefore, SEM and EDX measurements was performed. An example, this beautiful particle was found. As you can see on the electron image on the left side, this particle sits on the surface of one side. Here it's laying on the surface, but on the right side it sits dug deep into the material. This speaks for a very high kinetic energy when the particle hits the surface. Such an effect is not to be expected from plasma treatments. The EDX analysis on the right side confirms this assumption. The particles found is a compound consisting primarily of aluminum and oxygen. As you can see here, these are the primary peaks. It can be assumed that it's an aluminum oxide particle from the blasting process. The particle just unfortunately dug itself so deep into the surface that it could not be removed by the cleaning process afterwards. So another type of contamination you can see here in the electron image. It seems to appear like small particles within the craters of the surface structures. These contamination were noticed multiple times during investigations, and the chemical nature was also analyzed during EDX. The results of the mappings are shown on the right side. The contaminated areas, so this area, there's a clear accumulation of the characteristic signals for oxygen and calcium, with also reduced intensities for the bulk materials, titanium. You can see here there's signal intensity missing. It can therefore be assumed that these are calcium oxides which are sitting within the craters. It cannot be assumed that these particles were deposited in the course of the plasma treatment, simply because we've found them also on reference and on plasma activated samples. Contamination during my sample preparation can also be ruled out due to the extremely deep embedding into the bulk material. So this contamination has to be already there before any sample preparation. Yeah, which brings us to the end of my presentation. I would like to close with a short conclusion. A clear improvement in the wettability with aqueous media by plasma treatment was demonstrated on all sample geometries and on all surface implants. Implant surfaces, that's the right way. The halving of the contact angle is possible, as my tensorometric measurements showed. At the same time, a change in surface due to the plasma treatment could be excluded by SEM, so there are no changes on the surface structure. Additional contaminations could also not be detected on any type of samples we examined. This shows that plasma treatment is a suitable tool for a geometry-independent improvement of the wettability of dental implants without changing the surface structure. So that's from my side. Thank you very much. And are there any questions?
So thank you very much, Marius, again for your nice speech. I always liked it to have this nice scanning electron microscope images and also see the high quality you can achieve also in a sub-micron scale. These are really, really good images of these surfaces.
Thanks a lot.
Then we have some questions, and please, Andrea, you can put some.
Marius, how often did you find contaminations from the aluminum oxide on the implants?
Hard to say. They differ a lot in size. So large particles like this, like the particle I've shown here, are rather the exemption. Maybe 2 out of 30 implants I've analyzed, I found these large particles. More often you can find very, very, very small particles, which are also containing aluminum oxide. This I ain't got no statistics. Maybe 20% you can find very, very small particles of aluminum oxide.
Was it dependent on the system you was
No.
analyzing?
No, I found these contamination on every single system I've analyzed.
Okay.
And do you know what's the origin for the calcium impurities?
I've got no clue. I really don't know where these calcium oxides can come from. Normally, I would say, hey, maybe it's a contamination by touching the sample or something like this, but then I would have found also calcium chloride, and that's not the case. So I just can assume that it's in the manufacturing process somewhere where these contaminations are, brought on the surface.
Okay, and is there an effect of the dipping speed on the immersion air?
Yeah, some effect is there, but just at a very high viscosity liquids. When we're using low viscosity liquids like water or the diode or whatever, there's no significant effect. But high viscosity liquids like glycerol and ethylene glycol, there are some problems because the liquid needs time to wet the surface, and then you have to use very, very low immersion speeds.
Okay, so this is what we also did in the first experiments when we start with this technique, that we have really two time scales, the one of the wetting and the other of the measuring process. But we thought that Marius determined that you can really split those effects with the water he used. So as he said, for water we had no influence.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Marius, again for a nice speak. We keep in contact, and then now I will introduce the last speaker for today. So let me hand over to Professor Dr. Ralf Smets from the University Medical Center in Hamburg-Eppendorf with his talk about bioactivation of implants. So, Mr. Ralf Smets, you can take over.
Hello, thank you very much. Dear colleagues, do you see my presentation? It's fine? Yeah? Hello? Do you see my presentation?
So we see your desk. Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you. Dear colleagues, yeah, thank you very much to relyon, to Mrs. Werkman and to Mr. Freund for the organization. Thank you very much. I like to talk something about bioactivation. I think we hear a lot today. It was very, very interesting, brilliant pictures, brilliant images. The speaker before, thank you very much for all these clear results. Now I like to talk a little bit about our point of view, about our results and our research in our small field about some ultraviolet activation and plasma activation of implants and abutments and membranes. But always, my strategy is always to keep in mind, before we start in talking about bioactivation, about optimization of surfaces and some techniques and tips and tricks to optimize the osseointegration and the hard soft tissue management, we always have to keep in mind, we couldn't say that the products, that the materials doesn't work, that the bone substitute materials doesn't work, that the bioactivation doesn't work when we do mistakes in hard soft tissue management, in the 3D implant position, in the prosthetic things, in our strategy of implant loading, early loading. You saw brilliant cases from the guy from the Netherlands, from Jan Willem, and we always have to keep in mind, you see on the right side, 33 and 45% of all the aesthetic result and all the benefit and the positive things is 78% all included is the implant position and the anatomy and nothing else. What I like to say, when I make a mistake in the implant position, in a soft tissue management, then we have to talk about research like this. Yeah, we always have to keep in mind that we have a clear strategy in the diagnosis, in our guided strategies, in the planning of implants, of bone augmentation, and even the prosthetic things. I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon, but we even have to learn from the prosthetic guys, from all the specialists, and to keep all these things in mind. A special planning, a guided working, we know how we make our mistakes and where we make our mistakes to get clear results. We have a lot of modern tricks in planning, but always keep in mind, even the abutments, even the right design, experts like Dr. Gerke, I learned a lot from him, the right material, PEEK, titanium, zirconia, yeah, we know this, the roughness, the mucosa, the clinical things, the purity, we learned a lot about all these things everybody's talking about. Do we really have pure products? The surface, is there some remnants on the surface? Are there really good surfaces? Yeah. Keep in mind, even to optimize your technique. If you didn't optimize your soft tissue management, yeah, if you didn't look on these rules for the flap design, the flap adaptation, this future technique, yeah, we will always have trouble. We learn from Burkhardt, from Fickel, from Zucchelli, from all these guys. Not the implant is the problem, not the bone augmentation. Yeah, we have clear rules for implant position, but even for the soft tissue, the right vertical extension. Always keep in mind, when your flap is thinner than 0.8 millimeters, we haven't to talk about cold plasma. It is against any biology. It doesn't work. When you elevate a mucoperiosteal flap, you have a bad nutrition of the bone. You lose 0.7 millimeters of the bone when you elevate a mucoperiosteal flap. What is the brilliant idea and all the strategies of these good soft tissue guys, Pat Allen and Zucchelli, all these guys? They didn't do any heart transplantation. Yeah, it's a clear surgery. It's easy, but you have to keep in mind these 10, 15 rules. But this is not the topic of the lecture. But we even have to know, yeah, that the right selection of your patient, the nature of the defect, the size of the internal space, the surgical technique, and even the material is important, of course. But the priority is clear, the selection of the patient and the nature of the defect. Miller class 1, Miller class 3, it's totally different. Single wall, free wall defect. A sinus lift procedure, sorry, it shouldn't sound arrogant. I have to learn a lot. I'm not an expert. Yeah, I even make a lot of mistakes every day. But a sinus floor elevation, it's one of the easiest regenerative cases we have. But a free wall defect or a single wall, a Miller class, that's totally different. A recession coverage, yeah. Why did I tell you this? The material, yeah, the products we are working with, our membranes, our bone substitute material, our implants, and even that maybe the technique from relyon, it's working. But my right hand make the mistakes. Sorry for this. That's the reason why I have not a lot of friends. Yeah, but you have to be honest. We make the mistakes. Yeah, we have to keep in mind: is it a diabetes patient? Is it a tumor patient? Is there some irradiation? Yeah, the oral hygiene, a parodontitis patient. All these things. Did the patient get any immune suppressiva? Yeah, all these things. These are influencing factors for my peri-implantat and soft tissue. Please keep this in mind. And all these patients are taking more and more medications all over the world. We are getting older and older because we have a lot of good doctors. We take a lot of medicine. That's not normal. Yeah. I don't like to boring you with all these things. I don't like to talk about political things, but we have to keep in mind there's a lot of medication in Germany in our patient, and that's the reason why there are a lot of risk patient, high risk patient. Yeah. Even look on this literature, 3.6. I'm always very fascinated. 3.6 million patients every day in Germany get any pharmacy. Yeah. It's very funny. Sorry for talking about this. But keep in mind, when they now take this medicine, some bisphosphonates or something else, then you have some problems. Yeah, then we have these problems. Patients with osteoporosis, patients with plasmacytomas or something else, osseous metathesis. Sorry for this. Sorry. Yeah, to have some pain reduction to help these patients. Yeah, we know we have a lot of problems. They have to take these drugs. This is very important. But these drugs have some side effects. Yeah. And then is the strategy, and this was the strategy of our research group, to optimize the osseointegration by these high-risk patients. We know a lot of our protocol from these patients. Then we take a longer healing time. We avoid augmentations. I know I talk a lot, but every sentence is important for these things. I told you, don't elevate the perios if it's possible. Of course, you like to have a tension-free adaptation of your flap, of course, but avoid any augmentations by these high-risk patients. There's a bad nutrition, a bad vascularization, a bad angionizes. No open healing, we learn from the American guys. Yeah, a tension-free wound closure. Yeah, prosthesis abstinence. We all know our strategies when we have irradiate patient or we have a bisphosphonate patient. But keep in mind, maybe can we optimize this? Maybe can we activate our implants by these high risk patients when we insert the implants? And this was the idea. Optimize the implants with an ultraviolet or plasma activation. It was founded by the Chemlock Foundation, the Oral Reconstruction Foundation. I always like to say thank you for all these things because research is expensive. Yeah, and always the same strategy like all over the world. Optimize your surface by an easy technology. I first studied chemistry and then dentistry and medicine, yeah, for MD and DMD. Yeah, it was a little bit crazy, yeah, but of course I first studied chemistry. And that's the reason why I'm always focused on surface modification. But I learned one thing in my second doctor thesis, yeah, we have some surface modifications with BMPs and other things. Come on, it's too expensive. It doesn't work. We have problems with the release of the growth factors, all these things. My strategy is an easy surface modification. Cold plasma is not a really surface modification, you know what I mean, but it's too expensive. The companies, they have good surfaces. They are not interested to spend a lot of money for a new surface. But maybe this is a system now, you open the blister, your girl at the chair side take the implant, give you the implant, maybe now chair side in the room, you can optimize this implant without any expensive surface modification. You know all these things, no treatment, ultraviolet treatment, plasma treatment, yeah, a hydrophoric surface on the left side, and now you see a hydrophilic after 12 minutes activation of the surface. You see our papers for this, we did animal research with this, cell culture with research, nothing special. Yeah, you learn a lot from the other guys this day, they're much better in this field. But I like only to show you these things. The working principle, the typical way from a hydrophilic surface to a super hydrophilic surface. Changes in your surface, what is important? To reduce these hydrocarbons. This is important. We all know this. It's a boring story, but you see less than 20% after 12 minutes. And now we optimize with some guys from the Max Planck Institute, yeah, to reduce this time schedule. Yeah, maybe to miniaturize all these systems like relyon. Do this, and this is very interesting. What was the strategy? We look on titanium and zirconia, even in another paper, even with PEAK, yeah, different surfaces, different materials, always the same strategy like all over the world. Ultraviolet surface treatment and cold plasma surface treatment, the typical strategy, the typical material methods, electron microscopy, confocal microscopy, surface energy, surface chemistry, you know all this better than me, yeah. Proliferation, BRDU assay, yeah, cytotoxicity, cell attachment, always the same strategy. How there's an adhesion and cell migration, yeah, to see is there proliferation of the cells, yeah. We are looking to optimize the cell niche, that the cells living proliferate there, we will see. But what do we see in the scanning microscopies and all these things? No relevant changes in surface structure on surface reference due to the ultraviolet and the cold plasma. And this is very important. Yeah, the companies don't like when you modify your surfaces. Yeah, we even see all these results. Yeah, what we are talking about for titanium and zirconium. Yeah, no significant difference between the methods. It's a drop share analysis and all methods from hydrophobic to super hydrophilic. Results in these papers are clearly significant reduction of carbonium compounds on the titanium and the zirconium for all procedures without any significant difference between the procedures. Significant increase of this layer on the titanium by all methods, with slightly but not significantly thicker oxide layer after this plasma functionalization. Please keep this in mind. If you're interested, I know it's full a lot of stuff. I sent you these documents, I sent you this information when you're interested. Results for zirconia. Keep even in mind significant reduction of carbon compounds by both methods compared to the control group. Significant more effective the cold plasma for the carbon reduction than the ultraviolet. I think we haven't to talk anymore. You know, the guys from relyon are not stupid. Yeah, they look on the right technique and they focus on the right technique. These are all the same results in all these groups, like the speakers before. Significant better cell attachment. We have the typical live dead staining. This is all over the world, the same strategy from all the biologists, yeah, to analyze these surfaces. Yeah, even I switch further on. I have only these 20 minutes. Yeah, results for zirconia 24, 72 hours after colonization. A significant increased cell attachment on the functionalized zirconia surface. Significant better attachment by the cold plasma 72 hours after colonization. Keep this in mind. And even for the XTT assay, yeah, proliferation after cold plasma functionalization significant higher and no cytotoxic effect by the ultrared or the cold plasma. This is very important, of course, or we can stop the project. Surface functionalization. My mentor always says, Ralph, don't talk so much about in vitro. We need in vitro experiments, of course, always, yeah, the biocompatibility, look on this, but it's much more important what is happening in vivo, yeah, in animal studies and even in human. We even do this study not only in animals, we even do this in human studies at the moment, but this is an off-label use. Keep in mind, the patients have to give you a signature because it's an off-label use at the moment, yeah. These are now the results with the study with the Chemlock Foundation in animals. We use the two typical systems. Yeah, nothing special. The old model from the guys, Professor Neukamp, Professor Wagner from Mainz, from Erlangen, all over the world, the Swedish guys, the American guys, they all use this model, Calvary of the skull, 2, 4, 8 weeks. Yeah, a valid model, 6 picks, 54 implants in total, 18 implants per group. And you see the strategy after 2, 4, 8 weeks. Look on in the histomorphometry for the bone implant contact and the ISQ for the resonance frequency analysis. Always we get an increase of the hydrophilicity. And this was important. Even for the ISQ, you see no significant difference between the samples. Yeah. In the histology, and I always love the histology because at the end of the day, I never believe the companies. I like to see the histologies. Yeah, we can talk a lot. We can look on a lot of cone beam CTs, a lot of CTs, a lot of panorama X-rays, yeah, or clinical things, BOP, bleeding on probing, all these things. At the end of the day, when we look on regeneration, I always like to see the histology. The histology is never lying. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Please always look in the publication, look in all these things to get clear data by histology, human or animal. At the end, for the results of the bone implant contact, the BIC, significant difference between ultraviolet and the control, significant difference between the NTP and the control, and no significant difference between ultraviolet and NTP. At the end, I like to show you, we have some results now with the relyon system. We even do the same studies before the implants and the abutments. We do it before with the other techniques, with the other companies, the systems. Yeah, we even at the moment look on in typical experiments for abutments and implants. But what I like to show you, I'm much more interested. I'm a big fan, and this is the reason why I collaborate. And it's a big honor for our department to work with relyon. Yeah, we optimize membranes. We had a PhD student, yeah, from Jordan to work with this. Yeah, we optimize now collagen membranes, maybe PTFE titanium stabilized membranes. Yeah, maybe it works. These are the results. Yeah, I have only this 20 minutes to show you, Mrs. Gada. You clearly look on all these membranes activated with the system. And even maybe crowns, bridges, abutments. Maybe there's a strategy you will laugh about, but we will see. I am a big fan maybe of optimizing the abutments. Yeah, we have results for this. You can look in the paper from GU. Yeah, we have titanium, zirconium, and PEEK materials activated by ultraviolet and plasma treatment. Always the same strategy: cell culture, live dead staining, all these things. And at the end, I'm a big fan. I'm maxillofacial surgeon. We have a lot of fractures. We have a lot of tumors when we do our microflaps. Yeah, the AO plates, you know, when you have an affected area, maybe we have a lot of problems in infected situations. Maybe in the next years, in 2-4 years, we will activate fracture plates, osteocentesis plates. You know this. Maybe 3 groups, GBR membranes, crowns, bridges, abutments, maybe, but even the osteocentesis plates. We will see that there's a better and faster osseointegration, a better hard and soft tissue managed by the high-risk patients. Of course, come on. I think everybody will know this after this webinar of the company today. A lot of brilliant speakers show this. And I will never say 100% I'm sure, but we see the good results in our other research projects with cold plasma and chronic wounds. We work together with some guys from Greifswald, yeah, and we know cold plasma is working in chronic wounds, and I'm a big fan now of the plasma in working in our oral field. We will see. At the end, to get a clear take-home message, I think it's very important to give you a clear take-home message. I think we are on an interesting pathway. Yeah, we have many possible applications. It's an easy application, my opinion. Handling, it's chair side. It works in every private practice, you know, not only at the university. Even I'm an academic. I'm a full professor at the university, but I'm a big fan. We are workers. Every dentist, we are workers. We do not neurosurgery, heart surgery. We are small workers, and that's fine. Yeah, and it works in our hands. This system works in every city, in every country, and not only in Berlin or Munich. You know what I mean? Or New York or Buenos Aires. You can even use this in the center of Africa. Yeah. The easy application, I think it's the best way. Your assistant opened the blister, you take the implant, you activate the implant, then insert in the patient, chair side. You have no problems with this circle of working. And the costs. Keep in mind how expensive it is to optimize surfaces for the companies. Talk with the guys. Talk with the guys how expensive is the SLA active, the Thionite surfaces, all these surfaces, they're expensive. Now it's finished. You couldn't hear me anymore. 20 minutes, very boring. Of course, it's very late. It was a hard day. I never will stop a lecture without saying thank you. These are the guys which are working when I'm talking here. Other guys have to work here. I will always like to say thank you. Well, I learned a lot in my study and I was working. And I even like to say thank you because research is expensive. I always like to say thank you to the government. Thank you to some other grants and person. And even I will never stop a lecture to say thank you to all my old head of departments, Professor Rüdiger, Spiekermann in Thailand. I learned a lot from these guys and I will never forget this. I like to stop this lecture. This is my email. When you're interested, when you like to talk about things, you can always give me an email. I know it's a full stop. This was 20 minutes, a lot of things. I even like to show only 6 slides to talk very slowly. Of course, I know this. I'm Dutch, but I learned one thing in Germany. Talk slowly looks always very cool. Yeah, come on. It's not my person is important. The topic is important. Yeah. If you like to talk with me, if you have a question, please send me an email, but even send the other guys. They know much more about this. Yeah. I like only to say thank you. And please, one promise. Yeah. Stay healthy. We have special times at the moment. We have a crazy time in this world. Yeah. Take care of you, of your family, of your private practice, of your hospital. And I hope we will see us again, maybe in person. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Kosmetz, for this interesting talk and for all the information you gave us. So I hope, or I'm quite sure, that there are some questions which Andrea will now provide.
So did you test plasma systems working with ambient air?
Sorry, can you repeat it with what? I didn't understand.
So I can just repeat the question. So the plasma systems, you demonstrated the results. Are these just plasma systems with sufficient air, so oxygen, or is a plasma system with ambient air already inside your studies?
It's oxygen. It was oxygen.
Okay, no ambient air plasma so far.
It was argon and oxygen plasma.
Okay.
And is the relyon plasma system as effective with its short treatment time as the other tested system?
You mean a short treatment time with the other system? No, no.
So I'm not sure if you got the question, sorry. So the question has been if our system is the same efficient as other systems with our short activation time.
Yeah. Sorry, then I didn't understand the question. What do you mean shorter time for your system?
So we have 45 seconds full process time.
It's much shorter, yeah.
Yeah. Do you recognize difference in effect?
No, that's the problem. It's a very good question. Everybody is asking this. It's always the same. I'm a big fan of a shorter protocol, of course. Yeah, but we have not clear results. This is what we are working at the moment. This is the big question always. How long is the effect? And what is the perfect time schedule, of course. But at the moment, I couldn't give you the final results. We are still working on this. Yeah, sorry, I was misunderstanding. It's a long day and a little bit tired.
It's a difficult question and it's late for us. So what I can additionally say to this question is that regarding the hydrophilicity, as Marius demonstrated how he can measure it, we know that we are at the time we spend for this process, we are already at a settled point. So we know that if we do a longer exposure to plasma, we have no measurable difference from a physical side. Therefore, we would not expect a difference in medical effects coming afterwards. So we know that our effect settles at this time we spend. And therefore, we see no reason to enhance this time, as we know the shortest process as possible is the best for the surgery.
Okay, the next question is for you, Florian.
Okay.
Is it already possible to buy this device, and does it have an FDA or CA certification?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question, and this is a very good point. So what we here have is the Konzept device, with which we generated the video, with which we can demonstrate our process, but we are not device manufacturer for medical devices currently. So we have our ISO certification to generate medical devices, but we are lack of a big sales force or a worldwide sales force. And therefore we need you, we need a contact, a strong partner to develop really a device which can sell to the dentists all over the world. Therefore, if you're interested and have the right sales force and interest in our device, please contact us.
Okay, one last question. Is it possible to use this technology intraorally?
So as we have seen, the plasma application has really a big potential, which is shown already in vitro studies. This device here is developed for at least this procedure in an implant surgery. But we have already a plasma device for handheld, and therefore we can develop different nozzles. And at all, there is possibility to develop different plasma surges with different shapes, whatever you can think of. this is something we have in focus, and this is what is in our strategy, that we know that plasma applications have a big expansion potential, and this is what we want to go for, is to keep to stay there and to enhance the application for the patient with you.
One more question. Is it possible to use the handheld device for the implant activation?
So far, so for now, it is an industrial device which is used, which has its intended use in surface activation, and therefore it is certified. We know that there are dentists who are using this device to activate their implants, but this is currently not in the intended purpose. So this is the risk is at the dentist currently. But if we get the right partner, we're working together with them to get the certification to have it as a medical device.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much for the attendance. It's a long and interesting webinar. Have a nice evening, have a nice day. I hope we hear from you. Goodbye.